Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.
Welcome to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss, and we are at Hy-Vee in the club room. And very pleased to welcome a very nice crowd here to watch Matt Steigerwald of the Lincoln Cafe do his thing. Now, before we get to Matt and all the other special guests that we have, I want to introduce our health coach, Emily Rose Shaw, who is with us at the top of every show to provide us some great tips on health and nutrition. Last week we talked about G-bombs, which I'm still not sure what a G-bomb is, but are we going to talk about that again, or are we going to use that again?
Yes, we're going to use G-bombs. G-bombs is an acronym that helps us to remember the some of the healthiest foods, superfoods, that you can find in any grocery store. So, and that was developed by Dr. Joel Fuhrman, who's a board-certified physician, very famous nutrition researcher. So we're going to, over the course of the month, we're going to use this acronym and go through it to talk about these foods and tasty ways we can use them.
All right, so did you always like greens, by the way?
Well, that's a good point. So the first letter of G-bombs is G, and that stands for greens. This is part 2 of talking about greens. And no, I didn't always like greens. Growing up, if you would have said, one day that I would crave them like I do now, I would have thought you were crazy. But actually, it was a gradual process for me. The more that I ate natural foods and greens, the more that I craved them. And actually, a biochemical process happens where your taste buds and your food preferences start to change according to the diet that you're eating. So if you're not a huge fan of greens right now, don't worry.
Well, let's just check. How many people are big fans of greens? Oh. Whoa. How many people aren't? Let's look at how do we convert you? Okay, so now we have to figure out okay, we've got to convert a few people here. So what would a sample menu eating greens at all 3 meals be like? Yeah, all 3 meals?
All three meals, yeah. And first I should clarify, when I say greens, I mean green leafy vegetables, so the whole array of them. So kale and collard greens and mustard greens and, even things like romaine lettuce have a lot of nutrients in there. So a whole range of them, for sure. So for breakfast, I recommend having a green smoothie. Green smoothies are wonderful. I have them almost every day. And if you're a beginner to green smoothies, I recommend things like baby spinach or romaine lettuce that have, not quite that green taste that some people might not like, but you really do start to really enjoy them. And I recommend a high-power blender like the Vitamix to really pulverize and make it really smooth for you. And you can also add things like lemon juice. Half a squeezed lemon in there, and it'll really help it be really palatable. And for a beginner green smoothie, I would say, 3 parts fruit, 1 part spinach would be a great mix.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. So I don't have to drink just spinach pulverized.
No,
okay.
No, you're putting in the whole fruits in there. Start blending and add your greens on top with water. Or coconut water is really delicious, and it's really good. It tastes like a fruit smoothie.
So 3 parts of whole fresh fruit, 1 part greens.
Yes. Yeah. And one thing, a great fact about green smoothies is a lot of the nutrients in greens and in plant foods are kind of trapped in the cell walls. So when you pulverize the greens and your fruit, you're actually releasing those nutrients, making them more absorbable to our body. So green smoothies, you absorb up to 95% of the nutrients, and chewing like a salad, just 15 to 25%.
Can we have our toast and eggs after that, or is that all we're supposed to consume?
Just have the green smoothie first.
All right, what about for lunch?
Okay, so for lunch, what I like to do is take some leafy greens or cooked greens and put them as a layer in a wrap. Or you could do, stuff some greens in a pita and take it to work. So just, adding that layer, it's a great way to put it with all the other toppings and everything. You could just fold it up.
So whatever else you're eating, if it's a turkey sandwich, you're just suggesting add a layer of kale or add a layer of chard, add a layer of romaine, lettuce, spinach, whatever.
Sure. Yeah. Whatever your favorite green is, go ahead and put that in with what you would normally put in a wrap, and then it's just you're getting more greens.
All right. Dinner.
Okay. Dinner. I love kale. Is the number one leafy green to consume nutritionally. So for dinner, what I love to do is kale salad, marinated kale salad. So this is really fun. You can get the kids involved in this, and you can break up the kale in little pieces, and you can make like an avocado-based dressing, or olive oil, vinegar, whatever you want to use, and take your hands and massage it in so it kind of gets throughout all of the kale, and then let it sit for like a half an hour. And then right before you're going to serve it, put on your toppings like tomato, raisins, pine nuts. Really delicious.
So you're getting your hands dirty and you're eating greens at the same time. All right, that could be fun. So top tips for integrating more greens into your diet other than what you've already told us.
Okay. So I had to think, what are my top tips for helping everyone get more greens? My first recommendation is really just to try one of those ways that I just talked about, integrating into your diet. Another tip is just to add greens, your favorite greens, to dishes you already love. So if you're having pizza, put spinach on it. If you're making lasagna, have a layer of chard. If you're cooking homemade tomato sauce, throw some greens in there while it's cooking. And that's, a really tasty way to do it. Okay, so salad, we all know salad. We think of romaine lettuce, chopped tomato, that's maybe not ripe, carrot. Really make salad be an entree, make it delicious. So what I like to do at home is put steamed sweet potato and avocado and chopped dates and walnuts and purple cabbage. Make it a rainbow, make it beautiful for all the senses. And then don't use fresh herbs just as a garnish. To mix up your salad, you can actually have fresh herbs as the base of your salad. Fresh herbs are just as nutritious as a lot of the greens are. So basil, cilantro, parsley, mint, have those at the bottom and put chopped vegetables in your dressing on top. It's something really delicious to kind of, they're incredibly flavorful. So that's another way. And then kale chips. Is a really healthy alternative to potato chips. There's a lot of recipes online, and I will post some recipes on my blog as well. But kale chips you can make in your oven or dehydrator. There's some really great recipes, and for people who won't eat kale any other way, kale chips is often the way to do it.
All right, EmilyRoseShaw.com is where you can find all kinds of tips from Emily and all of the audio clips from Emily's tips on a weekly basis will begin appearing on your website within a couple of weeks. So Emily's going to be with us for the next 6 months, offering all kinds of tips to make your life more healthy. I feel healthier now. I don't know, just after listening to her for a few minutes. I don't know how you feel. So one more thing before we let Emily go, and that is, what's the action step? Because I know you want to give an action step every time you're here. What's the action step for today?
So the action step is to really challenge yourself to try and have greens at every meal of the day for, as much as you want. I would say, one day this week or as many as you want. If you're not ready for a green smoothie, put greens in your omelet in the morning. And then for lunch, salad, just stuff those salad greens in a pita for work. And for dinner, steam some greens. Stir fry bok choy is a wonderful green, calcium. There's many ways to integrate it.
It sounds like fun. All right, everybody's got their assignment. Make sure that you report back when we hear from you again next week. All right, Emily Rose Shaw, our health coach on Great Taste. Most of you know, if you're listeners to the show, that Kathy Dubois, who I'm standing next to, I'm sure everyone on the radio can see that, has been the co-host of this show for many years, and she's moving to Florida. So we're really sad that she's going to be taking, we'll call it just a temporary hiatus, because I fully expect that she'll be back soon. If she doesn't miss the show enough, she'll miss something else here. So glad to see you. We're really thrilled that you're here, and this is a fun show, right? This is great. We've got Matt Steigerwald here, who's busy grilling eggplant right now. It's going to be great.
Yeah, it looks like a really good show, and I'm really What?
She reached for the mic. Did you see that? She reached for the mic. She cannot. We're going to boot her.
You're not supposed to touch the mic? Oh.
And she wasn't listening either. Excellent. Excellent. Good final appearance, I think.
It's kind of normal, isn't it?
Very much so, yes.
Anyway, I'm really going to miss the show. It's really amazing that you're getting such a turnout.
Just because it was your last day, that's
No,
why.
I don't think so.
I think it was for Matt, so that's really, really good. Glad that we could do that.
It's a really sweet show, though, and you do a great job. I'm going to miss you.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you so much. All right, so help Matt out. Make sure that everything goes okay, and watch him. Make sure he's doing everything right. Okay, because we certainly don't want him to make any mistakes while he's here on the show. Now, last month, the Iowa Source, what happened to my issue of the Iowa Source that was sitting, it's on the floor. Okay, excellent. So last month, the Iowa Source had its annual restaurant issue, and this was called What's Cooking Iowa. And the Source actually has been doing this for quite a few years, and we want to talk first right now with Claudia Mueller, who's the publisher of the Iowa Source, and let's talk a little bit about how long have you been doing this restaurant issue?
I think we started 9 years ago. So it was like January. We were trying to think of something fun to do and something that would really engage people. So we thought food, because everybody loves food. It's something you do all year round. And so we came up with this restaurant contest. And so it was fun for people, and we thought it would be a good thing to promote all the restaurants in Iowa, because it's not an easy business to make a living in.
We're going to find out about that a little bit later when we talk to Matt, because I'm very curious as to how in the world anybody could have had the chutzpah to open a restaurant of his caliber in Mount Vernon, Iowa. So we're gonna see if he's got all of his, if everything's still there or not. Anyway, anyway. So throughout the years, basically, it's been a kind of a contest. People have been voting and having fun. How many people participated in this? Many people in the audience have done that? Okay, so a lot of people have over the years. But this year you changed it up a bit.
We did change it a little, and it was actually Nina's idea.
This is Nina Benjamin.
Hello.
And we wanted to do something a little different just to make it more lively. And so Nina had this idea that we would make the contest just one part of it, and then we would actually plan to interview chefs and write up restaurants in addition to the contest. So now the contest is just one little part, and we had 2 chef interviews, and one of them was Matt, and we had each of us, Nina, myself, and Sarah, who's in the audience, we each profiled a restaurant. In addition to a couple other articles on food, and we had a profile of Earth and Water Tea Shop.
Yeah, and it really caught my attention because it was a really great change, I think, to kick it up another level. Very, very interesting to profile different people. And you profiled Matt, as Claudia mentioned. And so what did you find out about him?
All of his cooking secrets. No, I just love to know the sort of backstory behind chefs and restaurants. I worked in a restaurant for a few years back in Lexington, Kentucky, and I love the whole, that whole world just intrigues me. Claudia and I both obsessively watch Top Chef, so we just love that whole world. And so I like to know why chefs get involved in the restaurant industry in the first place. I like to know what they like to eat on their own time, because it's usually something totally different than what they cook. Matt's was fairly similar, he said, but I knew a chef that every night after going home from making delicious, gorgeous food, he would go home and make frozen pizza and put hot sauce on it. And I was, how does this work? So, I don't know.
You want to tell us who that was?
No.
No.
I won't name names. Anyway, so it's just fun to, I thought it would be fun to give readers a glimpse into some of the restaurants and chefs that don't necessarily get as much coverage or don't necessarily get all the votes in the survey, but there's tons of amazing restaurants in this region. So I just thought it'd be fun to highlight some of those.
That's great. Well, we're very pleased and thrilled that Matt decided to come down here. Matt Steigerwald opened this restaurant in Mount Vernon, Iowa, a very small town, and you have survived. And I think it's absolutely amazing, because there's no way that a restaurant of its caliber, could have survived in Mount Vernon, Iowa, with the population of Mount Vernon, Iowa. So you had to turn it into a destination.
Yeah, we always have a sort of what we think of as a local menu. So we always do hamburgers and chicken sandwiches and salads, and then at night we offer that as well. But we do 3 higher end entrees that kind of show off what we feel like cooking or what we're interested in or what's seasonal. What I'm interested in, basically. So I think we couldn't really live without either group of people. We get, we've kind of taught some of the locals who might not have been interested in what we're doing at night that there's some interesting food that they haven't tried. And we've also, I think, brought down some of the people from Iowa City and Cedar Rapids and maybe even Fairfield and Waterloo and Dubuque into this town to eat these higher end dinners. It's worth the drive for that, I think, for them as well. So.
By the way, I just want to ask, can everybody hear Matt or not? If you can't hear him, we'll talk up a little bit louder. It's unfortunately the hood, which we have to have on because of the grill, but when we're finished with the grill, we'll turn off the hood and it'll be a little bit quieter in here. Okay, great. So that's perfect. That'll make everything a little bit easier. So one of the things that I want to mention, because I think it's important to our discussion, and that is that if you haven't eaten at the Lincoln Cafe, and you maybe have never even heard of the Lincoln Cafe.
What?
I said maybe.
Maybe. Okay.
Right. Matt is recognized by not only his peers, but by many people who are food lovers in the state of Iowa as probably the best restaurant chef in Iowa. Now, he might want to, shy away from that, but I'll say it because I've heard all the time about Matt and what he does at the Lincoln Cafe. So it's quite extraordinary, I think, to be a person who's recognized that way. And I feel like that the reason is because of not only, we have to find out what you're doing here soon, not only, what you're doing in terms of the local and raising the bar for making some entrees every night that are extraordinarily different than most Iowans are used to, but also the background that you brought to the business itself.
Yeah, I'm from the East Coast. Grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina. Went to school at UNC Chapel Hill. And we ended up out here because my wife got her doctorate at UNC Chapel Hill in literature. Started looking for jobs around the country. It's not a great, it's not that easy to find a good job like that. Came home one day and said, there's this little town called Mount Vernon and this little college called Cornell College, and I kind of like it. And I was like, I expected her to come back from D.C. saying the same thing, or New York, but Iowa. So, I had never been to Iowa and really had no idea what to expect. But so we came out here, and I was fully expecting to. I was 30. I'm 46 now. It was 13 years ago, so whatever that ends up being.
33.
33. And I had really fully expected to find some chef that I hadn't heard of yet that I wanted to work under and have this great thing. And I didn't really find anybody when I came here that really inspired me to do what I wanted to do. And there was this little diner in Mount Vernon that had just closed. The people we happened to move next to owned the building. It was just kind of very like serendipitous, and they sold me the space very cheap. We didn't touch any of the dining room. We left it kind of dinery, which I think in the end has actually helped the space in terms of how it feels. And within 6 months, we had the cafe open. When we started, everybody said, don't do any of the stuff that you're used to doing. Do burgers and do sausages and so we did that. I mean, when we first opened, the dinner specials might be mashed potatoes and some homemade bratwurst for whatever, $12. But as I started feeling more relaxed and started getting positive response from the guests, you can't have a career where you're not doing what you enjoy and keep it going. So eventually I just started pushing it up. And there were people that we lost in terms of, well, we don't really want that. Well, sorry. But we gained tenfold what we lost, I think, in the beginning doing that.
How much does your background in the South play into in terms of the development of the restaurant and also today in the restaurant?
I've always, I was raised in the South. Well, it's kind of the middle South, I guess, North Carolina. But my cooking heritage is fairly. I was pretty lucky because I got to Chapel Hill when I was 19 and started cooking for some people who had cooked with some really great, well-known chefs. Namely, there's a gentleman named Bill Neal who brought back Southern cuisine at one point and got a lot of attention for that nationally. It was kind of the original, renaissance of shrimp and grits that you see a lot now. And I worked with people who worked with him, and that was real lucky for me. So those dishes, shrimp and grits and all that stuff, Hoppin' John and biscuits, I can roll out of bed and do that stuff and love it. And so those flavors are always so strong. That's a cuisine based on what's in the farm, what's coming up in the garden, what you have left over, what's cheap. And that makes things more personal when you're cooking them. And I think that translates into every meal I do now. I feel real personally involved with what it is. And whether I've decided to get some truffles from France, doesn't happen very much, but if it, there's a reason I'm getting it now. It's seasonal, I'm interested in it, it's going to work well with what we're doing. So it's the whole thing about the South to me was it made me connect to the food in a way that I don't know. I guess I would have had that same thing anywhere I grew up. Everybody would have. But it made me connect in a way to the soulfulness of the food that I appreciate, that I'm really glad happened.
You're listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss, and we're talking right now with Matt Steigerwald, chef, owner of the Lincoln Cafe and the Lincoln Wine Bar in Mount Vernon, Iowa. And one more question before we get to actually what you're doing on the stove, because I'm sure everyone's curious about that. And that is, you make, obviously, those things that are important to you. That's what you talked about. It's a very personal experience. Is it something that you've found over the years, now that you've been doing this for quite a few years at the Lincoln Cafe, that you need constant innovation within yourself to maintain the excellence, or is it something that you can roll out of bed, like you said, with
Right.
shrimp and grits?
Well, I was actually thinking about that on the way down. I feel like when I moved here, I was considered a young chef. And now at 46, 12 years later, I feel like when I talk to the men and women who I hire or who I meet, they think I'm like an old guy, which I'm really starting to
You're not an old guy.
But I'm really starting to embrace that. I really feel like it's nice. I wouldn't have wanted to come down here and do this 5 years ago because I don't think I would have felt comfortable doing it. But what has happened, I think, with food for me is kind of anybody with any craft goes through an arc of desires and what they wake up thinking about at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I feel like innovation to me at this point has become slightly back burner and more trying to focus on what the dish needs or wants or what it's asking you to do or what it, not worrying so much. I think if you asked me 5 years ago about the food I was doing, there would be many more right angles and powders and tight things being achieved for the purpose not necessarily of being delicious. That's at that point in my head, I think that was a goal, but the focus was looking good and learning something about the technical aspect of cuisine. And I feel like over the past probably 3 years, it's pretty recently, I've moved much more into working with the ingredients, hands-on, personal cooking, touching it, seeing what it needs. It's less and less about a recipe, I guess is what I'm saying. It's more about feeling it, touching it, tasting it. What does it want? Do you want to put an egg on it? Yes, I want to put an egg on it. It's just become something where it's much more of a craft that I feel in my heart versus a craft that I was trying to grow at and become technically proficient at. Does that make sense?
It makes absolutely perfect sense. As a matter of fact, Kath, when I'm listening to Matt, is that he's giving advice to every cook, every home cook. Absolutely perfect thing. Feel it, touch it. What does it need? Just get into it and do what you feel motivated to do.
And it reminds me of a friend of mine who once said that you have to learn the rules and then you can break the rules.
Right.
And I think that you've honed your skill. You know, you've learned that I like this with this.
Right,
And so,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. And you know, back on the subject of what did I get from Southern cuisine, I mean, all of the food that I cook now is, well, most food I cook now is based on warm places on the earth. So I love cooking stuff from, you know, the Levant, you know, the Middle East. I love cooking stuff from Southeast Asia. I love cooking stuff from the American South. I love cooking stuff from Mexico. And, you know, it's like the food that's close to the equator to me and has some chili in it and has some strong flavors and has some acid. Those things are important to me on a daily basis. And it's because those are the flavors I grew up on. And that's what my food has become much more now than it was 10 years ago. You know, it's like, I mean, it sounds silly, but it's like when you get old enough to learn to get out of the way, you're probably going to be a happier cook. Just get out of the way. Don't worry about it. Just do what you want to do. Cook what you want to cook. Don't worry about what it looks like on the plate. Don't worry about anything else, and make it taste good, and it'll look right on the plate if it tastes good.
And that's really it. It'll look, if it tastes good, it's going to be something everybody's going to enjoy. All right, so what are we going to have that's going to taste good?
This is will be a Middle Eastern harissa. It's you know, basically all these cultures I mentioned have their own version of a hot sauce. Everybody's got a hot sauce, and I love them. And this one is originally Tunisian, but there are versions Libya, a little more Morocco now than it used to be. Roasted peppers. The general spices of this one are probably what set it apart from some other cultures. That is, you're going to get some of that clove, some of that allspice, some of that warm spice. The Moroccan version always has caraway, which I really find interesting, and I'm still kind of working that out where it fits flavor-wise, but I love it.
Look at my wife. Look at her. I looked at her immediately. She despises caraway.
Yeah, well, I never ate caraway in North Carolina. It, like for me, it seems like a sauerkrauty Midwestern thing, which I never cared about. But this has made me love it. I mean, I love sauerkraut now, of course, but it's a weird addition. So you can, play that flavor into that. You think about rye and what goes with rye. And anyway, so this will be, this is roasted onions, peppers, the chilies you gave me, and then spice mixture of cumin, allspice. I think we put some coriander in there. Is that right? What was the third one?
Caraway.
That's the only three. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then we use some olive oil or some grapeseed, onions, soften it all down, put the roasted peppers in, a little tomato, and then we're going to put that in the food processor or the blender, and we'll adjust it with some lemon juice. And we'll do a little more oil in there, and just salt and pepper, and if you want more heat. And then this is going to be the sauce that we're going to toss with the roasted cauliflower. I like cauliflower in these kind of dishes because it's kind of a medium for the sauce. We have some local kale that we're going to mix in there too. So that's going to be a little roasted olive oily spicy side dish.
And we're going to get our greens.
We are going to get our greens. And then we're going to put it all in the blender. No.
She's gone. You can say whatever you want.
I'm not going to put it in the blender. And then the other thing we're going to make is a falafel. Again, that part of the world I feel like is a cuisine that gets overlooked in terms of the kind of restaurants I go to. And I go to Chicago and New York. I go to these high-end restaurants. There's a lot of Italian influence, and there's French influence, and there's more Spanish influence than ever. But you just don't see a lot of Middle Eastern influence in the food, and the flavor profiles are very similar. It's simple food, it's inexpensive food, it's delicious. So I've been kind of doing a lot of it. We just actually had a special dinner on Sunday that was a Middle Eastern dinner, and we did lamb and we did these two things, and it's really fun to play with. So we're gonna, as a little twist, we're gonna make falafel, which some people think is hard to make. It's very easy to make. And then we're going to, charred eggplant. At the cafe, I'll burn the eggplant all the way on the outside. So I'll just hold it over the flame and burn it, and then put all that in the food processor as a puree, and then mix that in the falafel, and it gives a real nice charred eggplant flavor. Here we just did slices over the grill, and we're going to chop that into the falafel. And that will get some mint as well as the cauliflower getting mint.
That sounds great. I wanted to actually bring up one of your biggest fans because he brought a little treat for us to enjoy. Ken Moy, you want to tell us a little bit about what you brought, because I'm sure Matt will find it interesting.
I brought a French wine, which is a kind of a blend. It's like a white Rhone, a Roussanne, a Viognier, and I thought I saw your dish, and I thought it might be a good foil to what you got there, and it goes well with vegetable dishes and so on. So hopefully that will work.
Yeah. My first thought with that is the floral aspect of those grapes. A lot of the Middle Eastern dishes we do, there's definitely a floral aspect, whether it be the allspice or oftentimes, in higher end Middle Eastern places I'll go to, and there's one in London we go to. There's always sort of like little buds of different flowers sprinkled over the dish as a garnish, and it adds that aroma of sort of an exotic feel to the dish, and floral aspect would be nice with that.
We will look forward to it, so thank you very much.
So excited Matt's down here. He's been a rock star hiding 90 miles north of here, and if you do go there, it is like going to a real destination. So I hope you all get up there if you haven't been there yet.
I need to check that cauliflower.
Please do. And I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to tell everybody that they're listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss, and anybody has any questions for Matt, please raise your hand. I'm happy to allow. He'd be happy to address any questions that you do have.
So, Matt, you said you visit a lot of restaurants in cities. So what are some of the restaurants you like, and what are they doing that's different than others?
Well, we also have a we also have a wine bar. Let me just get this out.
I forgot that he said that he had to do something, right? That he was going to do some cauliflower, and then I'm having you ask questions to him. So we're gonna come back to Claudia and Nina for just a second. I'm wondering, was there any event that you can come up with over the last few years that has been pretty interesting as far as restaurants are concerned when you put together your issue? And I know that I'm putting you on the spot right now, but interviewing the chefs, I know, was very, very important for Nina.
Well, Nina was just saying there was a Top Chef Iowa City event in late March. That's the only thing I can think of. But as far as the source and our contest, I don't know. I mean, we get some interesting stories every year. We ask our voters to submit an essay about, this year it was your dream restaurant. Tell us about your dream restaurant, and what's the menu, what's the decor, is there music? And so we got a lot of interesting submissions for that.
The most interesting one you can think of?
Well, the one we chose as the winner was somebody who really liked the paleo diet, and which is, I suppose what the cavemen ate, very basic, not processed food. I don't know a lot about it. And she thought they should have, the restaurant would have fireplaces, very, I don't know, caveman-like, and storytelling.
Do you actually go out and bring the food in yourself? I mean, you go out and in the paleo diet, you go out and kill it and kill it and bring it in yourself. That would be a good thing, to do that.
Okay, sorry about that. One thing I like about going to cities to eat is that seeing the chefs who I was watching when I was 25 and 30, and they were my age or a little older, watching those men and women doing, the kind of food I was talking about earlier, very constructed, very tall food was great at that time. Eating was great at that time. All of those people who I respected and loved at that time have opened their second or third restaurant, and it gets to be, it's almost like there's just as much care, but it's just easier. Each one is like simpler food. By the fifth one, it's like, here's some bread. It's great bread, but here's some, and so I like try to find the people who I loved and whose books I read and followed closely when I was 25 and 30, and I find the places that they've opened since then, or that they've backed since then, or the young chefs that they've pushed forward and said, do this and I'll back you, and I go to those places as much as I can. I mean, and like I was saying before, we have a wine bar 3 doors down from the cafe, and it's it's just that. It's perfect for that for me because it was just a little wine bar that was literally 6 feet wide from front to back with a bar that took up 3 feet of it. And then we knocked out a wall for the building next to us, and we bought a really nice handmade Stefan Ferrara wood-burning oven from Naples, Italy. There's only 30 of them in the country. Had it shipped here on a boat, took the front of the building off, put it in. Worked for a year on a pizza dough recipe, and we're selling 70, 80 pies a night now. And we only seat about 35 people in there. And we do live music on Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays. We've got wines by the glass. That list changes every day. And we do about maybe like 25 to 30 whites, 20 to 30 reds. And so for me, that has become a kind of place where, yes, I'm the chef there, but there's no cooking for me. I mean, you know, I worked on the dough with my guy Aaron. He has it down. He loves it. He's a baker. He wants to do it the rest of his life. And I come in with the specials every day and go, hey, I got these great artichokes. I got this great cheese from California I really love, and we got these local peppers. Let's have that be one of the specials. You know, that's my job to kind of curate it. So at this point, it's like that's the kind of place I want to go to, like a place where, like I said, the food is not frou-frou. I mean, I still love going to eat at Alinea in Chicago. I go there probably once a year. It's amazing. But I don't want to cook that kind of food anymore. So I try to go to places where I'm comfortable, I relax, but I know the person behind it is still in the game and it's still as hard. They still have their heart in it. They're still doing something simple and great, bread, pastries, you know. So, you know, I mean, I can name the restaurants, but, you know, it's just whoever I was thinking about this week that I used to love his restaurant 10 years ago, find what he's doing now, you know, or, you know, like find what she's doing now and do that, eat there. And they're always great. They're always great. Simple seafood, cold seafood, you know, so.
I wanted to mention that I thought it was interesting. There's this whole thing about, what is it, 6 degrees of separation? Is that what they call it? Where you can be, like, find any kind of connection with a person. And the first time you and I talked, what came up was that we had frequented the same bookstore in Charleston, South Carolina, with John Martin Taylor.
Martin Taylor, who was amazing. He was a young man at the time in Charleston, who opened up a food-only bookstore. And at that point, there was only a couple around the country. One in San Francisco, Kitchen Arts and Letters in New York, I think, and his, and it's called Hoppin' John's. And I used to drive from Raleigh to Charleston just to go to his bookstore because I thought the idea of a cookbook store, I can't even believe how great that is. Like how is that possible? So I would just drive down to Charleston, and I was 18, and I would bother him, and I would sit in there and read the books, and no one else my age was going in there really, and we had long conversations, and we're still friends. And he's great. He's won awards for his endless contributions to the American food scene. He's wonderful. They're actually living. I think they've moved to Bulgaria.
And now they're in China.
Are they in China now? Yeah. So now he's a world traveler.
So let's talk about Iowa cuisine for a moment, because one of the things that it seems like from my observation of the scene in Iowa is that our producer culture is fantastic. It's just grown to be world class in some instances with people like La Quercia or Milton Creamery and others, and yet I see that when it comes to eating and restaurants, we seem to lag way behind the producer culture, and I'm not sure I understand why that is.
Well, I think that's a normal progression. I think that young people starting a farm, calling a farm, is probably not really a farm, and it's cheaper to do than committing to buying a building and opening a restaurant. So I think that there's a lot of this happening, like my friends back home, you know, when I lived in Durham, Chapel Hill, there were 3 or 4 good high-end restaurants, and we all knew each other, and that was it. Beside that, it was some chains and bars and grills. And there were probably half a dozen good organic local farmers. So if you go back to Durham now, and which is gotten so much attention for being a food place. My other friends have opened restaurants. Now there's probably 15 great restaurants in Durham, Chapel Hill, but there's probably 50 organic, interesting farms within a 5-mile radius. So, I mean, I don't have an answer as to why that's how it expands, but it seems to always expand. So I'm happy that we're getting more producers. And maybe the logic is more producers doing this, more people getting interested in food at home, and somehow generationally it becomes something where the kids at home are interested in that food, getting better food, getting into cooking, and then moving on to open restaurants. I mean, I know that the people who've worked for me in the past 12 years have gone on to do restaurants. And I don't think that would have happened. I mean, I don't think I could be doing the restaurant I'm doing now without the local producers. So I don't know. It's kind of symbiotic, but it does seem that the farm culture, the organic sort of great farm culture, seems to happen happened in San Francisco too. Happened everywhere before the great restaurants pop up, and maybe because if we stop and think about it, the great restaurants rely on the good farms to have the really simple, good food.
Do you see yourself continuing? I mean, this is a business that really, I want to say, is for young people, being a chef and working the kind of hours. Right. So do you see yourself continuing in this?
No, absolutely not. If there's anybody here that would like to buy a lovely little restaurant in Mount Vernon, please contact me. Now, I would love to at some point be handing the cafe off to some young chef who's working for me and is going to take care of it. And I think that's a great thing. I mean, I would love to do more things like this. I have the wine bar. I mean, it's fantastic. I love the cafe, but I mean, the fact of it is when staffing problems happen or someone's sick, I mean, I worked the past 3 weeks. I've been in the cafe 240 hours in 3 weeks. And that's on my feet cooking. And that's not normal, but that happened because someone had to leave in a hurry and they got this other job and they said, I'm sorry. I was like, it's great. Take the job. They wanted to move. That's great. But in the meantime, someone's got to be staying there cooking that food. I mean, my overall arc has been to not be there in the evening as much. I just don't have any interest in that as much. So I'm in there in the mornings and I leave at 6 o'clock most nights, or I'm there till 11, if I work the dinner shift. But it's not something you can do. I mean, that's why I'm interested in this kind of food more too, because I could do this for 20 more years. I can't stand up there and construct, fancy plates for 20 more years. It's going to kill me. It's just hard, But if I can find something in the food that brings more of a spiritual thing to my life, and at the same time contributes to simplifying the food and making the actual physical job easier, then I think there's a winning situation there for someone to grow old and do it, which is what I'm trying to do somehow. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very, 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 very fascinating. Yes.
So did you have the wine bar from the beginning? I mean, was it yours from the beginning?
My friends Dale and Casey, who own Liberty Iron Works in town, he does a lot of iron work. They came to me at one point because the cafe doesn't sell alcohol. We have to have 2 restrooms. That's a whole other hour show. If you want to talk about the arcane Iowa legalities of me selling alcohol, but they opened it up after they came to me and said, "Hey, you can't sell alcohol. What if we open a little wine bar down the street?" And people can come get bottles there and bring it down. I said, that's great. And they did that for a couple of years, and they were like, we don't want to do this. I think the goal all along was to open it up and get me to buy it, and so that's what happened. So I bought that from them in 2007, and I've had it ever since. Yeah.
Other questions for Matt?
Matt, can you tell us your hours and what days you're closed so that if we make a 90-mile trek, we don't go, oh, my God, he's closed?
Well, but you have the internet. So on our website is all that stuff, too.
I was there today.
But we're not open Monday, ever. It's the only day I have off. And we do brunch on Sunday only, no dinner service. And other than that, it's lunch and dinner every Tuesday through Saturday. and then brunch Sunday. And then the wine bar is open Tuesday through Saturday nights only. We don't do lunch there. Sometimes we'd like to do lunch there, but it's just too hard to get that fire going so early in the morning. Yeah.
I want to actually talk to you about that fire in a second. Hopefully I'll get a chance to ask you about that.
Hey, could you tell us about some of the local producers you're working with?
Yeah. For meat, poultry, and all that stuff. Yeah, and what? Oh, I keep forgetting the mic's not here. And I think what's really interesting about that is we're coming into spring, and those names change or get added to every year. So, last year there were 6 or 8 local farmers, and to say farmers, some of these people just have a garden in their backyard, and they bring me 2 pounds of kale and a dozen duck eggs. So it's they're growers just like we're growers, and they just sell it to me. But we have a pretty vibrant farmers market in Mount Vernon. So we do. There's a woman. Her name is Lois Pavelka, and her husband do a lot of lamb, and they do pork as well. We get that from them. Beef we often get from a family called Grass Run Farms. That's not really in Mount Vernon, but they're doing really nice grass-fed beef, I think north of Waterloo. But for vegetables, there's a guy named David Miller who does a company called Pure Prairie Gardens, and he lives in Mount Vernon. He's the head of the Mount Vernon Farmers Market, and he helps organize all these growers. So at the market, if a couple little 8-year-olds bring 3 eggplants to the market to sell, and they don't have, and they still have them at the end of the day, no one bought their eggplants, he just says, go talk to Matt and he'll buy them from you. So I'll just buy that. You know what I mean? So I just buy whatever people have. But I'm the other thing that has happened too is that some of the growers that I had 5 years ago, I don't hear from anymore. I don't see anymore. And I'll look them up, and they've moved or they've stopped farming. Sometimes these are people who are in families where one member works and the other member does the garden at home because there's not a lot of money in it. And well, if the first person loses their job, the gardening is going to go, and this person's going to have to find another job. So there have been instances where that happens too, and I lose that person. There's one couple that is really great that I should mention. They live about a half hour from me, and their names are Dot and Don Pisney, and they got a hold of me 2 or 3 years ago and said, we have vegetables. We've been gardening. Are you interested? I was like, yeah, bring them on. I was like, well, we don't really drive that much. Would you mind stopping out? So I stopped out there. It was kind of a rural house. It was actually behind a Hy-Vee, and they're in their 80s, and they live by themselves in their house. And he built the house. He had 18 beehives. He walked down their back of their house, and they had this amazing, pristine garden. I mean, it's like probably 3 times the size of this room, and it's just Dot and Don, and they do it every day. And they get up, they go down at 7 o'clock in the morning, they bring their apple and their cheese with them, they eat a snack in the morning down there. They hand off each thing to get. It's really, really meticulous and beautiful, and they're just there. They can't get their vegetables to anybody because they're not going to drive them to anybody. So every Monday I go there and I come back with a truckload of vegetables, and they're amazing. I mean, they're really, really amazing people, and they've been doing it their whole lives. Their whole lives have been doing this. There are little pockets of people out there like that in Iowa, especially, that are doing that, and I've had a lot of luck finding some of them, or they found me actually.
And we're really fortunate here. I don't know, I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but Matt, you might find it interesting that the Fairfield Farmers Market is the second most successful in terms of revenue in the entire state behind Des Moines. Yes, really? Behind Des Moines, right. Yeah, our farmers market here locally. So, yeah, you can applaud. That's fine. All right, so anything more that you want to tell us about these dishes?
We're going to do the roasted cauliflower with kale and the harissa. I serve that room temperature at my restaurant sometimes for lunch. It's great, hot or cold. Probably just for ease, we'll just serve it room temperature. And then I should start making the falafel if we're going to get it done before long. So falafel is really just chickpeas, generally chickpeas. There's you can do with lentils. I've seen other things like that, but it's just a way to get the chickpeas into a fritter. And I do chickpeas. I do a little bit of cilantro, mint, parsley, a little garlic, a little bit of the same spice we use in here, a little bit of cumin allspice. You can do a little lemon zest. I probably not. And then as a binder, you can either use chickpea flour, chechi flour, and a little bit of baking powder to give it a little lightness when you fry, or you can just do regular bread flour, which is what we'll do today. And then, like I said, we'll get the eggplants chopped up into there. It just adds a different element to the flavor. The other thing we're going to have with that is I often do a lemon goat cheese yogurt with the falafel, which is a nice accompaniment. Also trying to use some of the flavors of that part of the world there.
Do most of the cheeses from that part of the world, do they have a wide variety of animals that produce cheese, or is it mostly goat?
A lot of sheep and a lot of goat. More sheep. But I don't know much about that. I mean, I know that the ones I get offered or the ones I see in the books are often hard sheep cheeses, or really funky aged goat cheeses. I see those a lot too.
Cheese can be funky, yes. Definitely. Yes, you're listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss, and next week on Great Taste, we have, as always, on the third Wednesday of every month, the Indian Hills Culinary Arts students will be here, and will be giving us some insight into what they've been doing in their own kitchens during their program. So we have the Indian Hills kids here every third Wednesday. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. I can mention it to them when they're here. Yeah,
always.
I'm sure they'd be very interested. And our annual farmers market show will follow the week after. But pay attention. Don't forget, if you're not on our mailing list, you'd like to be on the mailing list, send an email to greattaste@kruufm.com and put in the subject line "Sign me up." And the reason I say that is because even though we're here almost every Wednesday, some Wednesdays we're not here, and we'd hate for you to show up and find the room empty.
Matt, I was just going to say that Indian Hills, they have a very active intern program. So it's a way that maybe Gordon Rader could get some interns up to him.
I think it's a great idea. He should, because they do six-week externships, and some of the kids are just terrific.
One of the roles we're always looking for in the kitchen is a person to do like the basic stuff. We're a busy restaurant, so we have me, we have sous chef, we have a line cook, but then we also have the salads and desserts need to be plated every night, and that position is always a hard one, because generally people come into my kitchen thinking, I'm going to do some fancy food, and then you're like, well, that's cool, but can you just make this salad for me? And they, I mean, that person is important. It needs to happen. But it's often not the person that stays around that thinks that they're not there for that. So young people in school, we're always looking for someone who wants to put their head down and focus and, watch what's going on and make some salads and desserts for us.
Well, I think that's was a very interesting point in Nina's article, and that was she asked you advice to young people who want to become chefs, and you mentioned a couple of things right now. But I think it's a really key thing to understand what it takes to do a profession where you might have to be on your feet for the number of hours that you talked about.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and the other thing I hear a lot from kids coming up is, well, I don't hear it from kids coming up. I hear because I don't talk to kids coming up. I hear it from the people who I hire. They say that the people that they're going to culinary school with watch way too much Gordon Ramsay, and they watch way too much Top Chef, and they think that the personality aspect of it, the celebrity of it, is an equal part to the cooking. And when I was coming up, we just didn't have that, So I didn't have a sense of that. But that is a huge deal. I mean, they come in and they think that they're going to be this amazing, and they got their hair fixed. You're like, why are your hair fixed? You don't need to look that good. We're just in the kitchen here. There's no cameras. Just relax. Just cook. Don't look good. Anyway.
I mentioned this to you because this was something that John Martin Taylor actually said to me. He had a friend who told him one day, there's only room for one ego in the kitchen, and that's the foods.
That's a good. Oh, I like that. I often, one of the things that I try to do in the kitchen is try to be, we're all doing this together, but at some point you have to be the boss, and you saying that the food is the one that is ruling the school is exactly what I've been trying to get at, and that's that. Let the food tell you what it wants before you tell it what it wants.
Okay, so everybody, how many people here are home cooks? How many people really cook at home? All right, so there are a lot of people in the audience that actually cook at home. What's the best advice that you can give them?
I like to find chefs I like and read their books. I just think books are just great. And just don't worry about the recipes. Just look at the ingredients, and you'll see these ingredients. Oh, yeah, they're putting these ingredients together. Oh, this same guy's putting these ingredients together. And just start throwing those ingredients together. You're not... You can always adjust just about anything with salt and a little acid and a little vinegar and a little heat at the end. If it sucks, throw it away, give it to the dog, start over before someone else sees it. But
or you can just act like it's really great, which I have done before, and everybody in my family looks at me and goes, "Are you kidding? You can't sell that."
Yeah. No, I just think you got to do it. I mean, it's a lot of home cooks are looking for shortcuts. I think maybe not this lot, but it's something that I think that we just need to not worry about shortcuts. You don't need to spend 30 seconds making dinner. You need to somehow figure out a way, if you care about it, to spend an hour making dinner. It doesn't seem like that much time to spend on a meal for yourself and your family. To me, because I enjoy it.
Right, and it's something.
Open a bottle of wine, for God's sakes.
We should do that in a few minutes. We'll definitely.
While you're cooking, have that wine going. It makes so much more fun.
We have to be careful. We can't give Kathy too much, though. She won't be able to make it. All right. So I want to thank everybody for coming, because it's been a great time talking to Matt. And I want to just mention one more time, Matt Steigerwald from the Lincoln Cafe and the Lincoln Wine Bar in Mount Vernon, Iowa, has been our guest. And also I want to thank Claudia Mueller of the Iowa Source and Nina Benjamin of the Iowa Source for also coming here. Sarah Kingsbury is also back there, who also works for the Iowa Source. And I want to thank all of you for coming and enjoying the show. And again, if anybody has to leave, they don't have time to eat, no problem. We're happy, that you came, and you can find your way out the door. Meantime, don't forget, we're here every Wednesday. Does it taste good?
Yeah, it needs a little more heat. Got any more heat?
You I should have brought the rest of those chilies. You want somebody to run out and get some?
No, it's delicious.
Yeah.
It's fine.
All right.
It's fine.
So, all right. So 60 minutes of delicious radio has just come your way on KRUU 100.1 FM, solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. Thank you for coming, and have plenty of time to enjoy some great taste in your own kitchen in the coming week.
Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.